street, I am told, is paved with pure gold, and the sun it shall never go down. There are evergreen trees that blow in the breeze, and their fruitage is brighter than gold. There the throne of God stands in the fairest of lands, and nothing shall ever grow.
Daniel chapter 5. Let's look at the first 4 verses, read the first 4 verses, and then make some observations about them. King Belshazzar, do not confuse Belshazzar with Belshazzar. The T is important. Belshazzar was Daniel's name. This is not talking about Daniel. This is someone else. However, the Bel portion of this name is connected with their deity. So there is some significance to the name, just like there is in most names from the Bible, that time period. Daniel, the EL at the end of Daniel, is connected to Elohim, the God of heaven. When they changed his name to Belshazzar, they were giving him a name that was associated with the Chaldean God. So this man also has a name associated with the Chaldean God. Don't ask me what the full interpretation of it is. I don't recall. Anyway, King Belshazzar made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords and drank wine in front of the 1,000. And Belshazzar, when he tested the wine, commanded that the vessels of gold and silver that Nebuchadnezzar his father had taken out of the temple in Jerusalem be brought, that the king and his lords and his wives and his concubines might drink from them. That's important information. They brought in the golden vessels that had been taken out of the temple of the house of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines drank from them, and they drank wine and praised the gods of gold and silver and bronze and wood and stone. So Belshazzar, who is here identified as king, hosts a big old feast. He has a banquet. Got 1,000 nobles. Whether that's a hard fixed number, it actually was 1,000 people in their families that he invited, or whether that's a general expression, we would say something. Well, there were thousands of them. We don't literally have a particular number in mind. We're just generally talking about it was a bunch. Whether that's the case, I don't know. On top of that, I'll add Hebrew numbers are difficult anyway. So just envision that this is a huge state banquet that is bringing in all of the noble class, all of the ruling class, all of the influential people of the kingdom. He orders the use of the gold and silver vessels that his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken. So we go all the way back to the beginning of the story, and we'll recall that Nebuchadnezzar had gone in and had, with his armies, conquered Judah, taken over Jerusalem, slaughtered a lot of people, taken other people captive, very selectively chose the people that he would bring back to Babylon for use in the Babylonian court, which included Daniel and his 3 friends, where they were educated and preserved, and then eventually found themselves at this point in ruling positions. We've already been told that Daniel's 3 friends have been elevated to ruling positions and to have some power in the kingdom. We know that Daniel has as well. Whether or not they were included in the 1,000 lords, I don't know, but it's very possible that they themselves might have been in this assembly. But he, for whatever reason, decides it's a good idea to get all of those things. By the way, this dovetails nicely with our study that we just finished in Exodus, and we're starting in Leviticus, of all of those utensils that were made specifically for use in the tabernacle. Those were the ones that were still being used in the temple. Those are the ones that Babylon has taken. And they were booty for Nebuchadnezzar. They were just treasures. They were the valuable things of the nation of Israel, and that tends to be what happens. Even our soldiers do that kind of stuff as well. When we go in and fight with people, a lot of times things are taken. Our government doesn't do it so much, as far as I know, but a lot of the soldiers do it, bring trinkets home with them, usually valuable things that they can try to bring home with their personal effects as mementos in demonstration of their dominance and power. I do know this, probably dating way back, but I know for certain as far back as World War II, our troops, when they went into areas, very often took the biggest homes, the mansions, the government offices, and took them over and made them their headquarters during the fight. Began to use all of the stuff and live in the homes and use them for their personal places and quarters to stay while they're there. That's the kind of thing that goes on when men engage in these kind of behaviors. Well, that's what Nebuchadnezzar did. He went through and said, everything that's of any value, grab it and bring it back to Babylon with us. That included the gold and silver vessels from within the temple. And so Belshazzar, he's having this big party and they're drinking wine, and he says, wait a minute, we've got all that gold and silver stuff from the temple. Bring it out here. And we're going to drink out of those vessels. And they drink wine from them while praising their idols. The way it's put here is their idols of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Why would they do that? What's the significance of saying, hey, these cups that we're using, which are perfectly fine and holding this wine just fine, let's set them aside and let's bring out the vessels from the Jewish temple and let's drink out of them in honor of our gods. It's to thumb their nose at Israel and Israel's God. Now, we have to keep in mind everything that we've learned up to this point in this book. These stories are not just random stories. They're very specific incidents that are being pulled out to teach, to lay foundation for what's going to be told us going forward, and to inform us about attitudes and values and things as they develop in the story. Nebuchadnezzar has gone through a lot, and that included two major visions that were messages from God that were teaching him a lesson. He didn't pick up on that lesson too quickly. And so the last big lesson, which was a follow-up to the first one was your kingdom is limited and there's going to be other kingdoms after you. He didn't like that message. He tried to hedge his bets on that and solidify his control. So the next vision was, look, this tree's going to be cut down. And he didn't really want to accept that lesson either. So what happened to him? Anybody remember the big thing that happened to Nebuchadnezzar? He lost his lost his mind. He lost his sanity. Yeah. He couldn't reason anymore like a man. He lived like an animal, meaning that he didn't think and he didn't process and he didn't know and he didn't determine and he didn't have control of his faculties such that he has a will like humans do and the ability to foresee and plan and make choices based on rational thought. Instead, he just acted. That's what animals do. Animals just act. In fact, it's instinctual. And I mean, to underscore how real that is, and for people that keep pets, okay, number one, certain pets, there's never any concept of training. Nobody that has venomous snakes will say, oh, yeah, this snake would kill you with one bite, but it's my pet. I've raised it since it was tiny, and it knows me, and it's not going to bite me. That's not what they would do, because they understand that the snake is just going to defend itself if it feels threatened. Now, they do learn how to act in ways that don't threaten the animal so they can handle it safely. But they don't think for a moment that the snake is going, oh, that's my owner and he takes care of me and brings me food, so I'm not going to bite him. But if somebody else comes along, I'm going to bite him. We do kind of start thinking that way about our dogs and cats, though. Okay, here's the blunt, unpopular truth. Your dogs and cats are not looking at you saying, oh, it's my owner, I'm going to be nice to them. Particularly your dogs. They're pack animals. They just view you as the alpha in the pack if they respond to you. And if they don't respond to you, it's because they think that they're the alpha in the pack and you're supposed to respond to them. That's just the way dogs are. When I was young, I took care of our dog. I was with our dog a lot. Our dog liked me. I fed the dog one day. I leaned over watching it eat. It thought that I was going for the food. It bit me. It didn't bite me because it didn't like me. It didn't bite me because it was mean or mad or upset. It bit me because it was saying, hey, you're getting too close to my food. When I'm done, you can have some. And that's the way they work in the wild. The one that's in control eats its fill of the kill, and what's left over, the rest come and clean up. It's just instinct. And that's the way he lived. He lived by instinct. He saw and he reacted without thought because he had lost that ability. God had taken it from him. And he lived that way long enough that it said that his nails, his fingernails and toenails and stuff had grown to where they looked like eagle's claws, like talons. His hair had grown and gotten so matted that it was like feathers. He lived out like that for a long time. He slept out on the ground, and the dew set on him at night. And it wasn't like he was like, oh, I need to find shelter. I need a blanket. He just laid down like an animal does. And that's the way he had lived. When he came to his senses, he was restored to his kingdom. That all happened in coincidence with him doing what? Recognizing God, Jehovah, that he ruled in the kingdoms and affairs of men, and that he could do whatever he willed and nobody could stop it. This is the next king basically saying, forget what Dad said. Our gods. We're gonna honor our gods with the utensils that were made for him. Again, asserting the dominance of the way of life and of the divinities of the Babylonians over God. That is extremely important. This is intentional desecration of the holy things of God. Now, done to some degree in ignorance, we can say that. They failed to know and to understand. They weren't being taught the Hebrew Scriptures. But it was still intentional, and it was intended to be an act of desecration to the holy things of a people that they had dominated. And they were simply saying, we are more powerful, we are greater, we are better than you. And let me show you that that's the case. So they drank at this banquet from these things, and we've got this vivid image of arrogance and disregard for God being shown. Listen, the setting itself is an affront to God. Would God have his people engage in the kind of behavior that's going on there? No. It's very careful to point out to us that it's with all of his wives, multiple, with his concubines. Everything about this is decadence. Everything about this is the mistakes and errors of humankind. Yes, the kings of Jerusalem made similar mistakes when it came to wives and concubines and those kinds of things. But was it ever God's intention for man to behave that way? The answer is no. He's very clear from the beginning. And when Jesus was asked about it, he was very clear about the teaching and went back to the beginning as the order that God gave, which was what? That a man should leave his father and mother and should cleave to his wives and concubines. No, should cleave to his wife. A man and a wife. And the two should become as one. Not the 1100 should become as one, but the two. That was the intent from the beginning, but these people are doing everything that represents hedonistic living. Their own gods, their own marriage arrangements, their own idea of what is fun and exciting to do. And by the way, yes, we know that there's a God in Jerusalem, but to show you that you don't have any control over me, I'm going to use the things of your temple to engage in my hedonistic behavior. This is very intentional, and it is an arrogant disregard for God. And we should, and when I say we, I'm talking about you and me and everyone else alive today who can read this story, should learn from it that pride blinds the heart to the dangers that face us. And so when people say things like, well, when you talk about fornication, for instance, marriage is disregarded, people are living together, people are having one-night stands, people are engaged in all sorts of things that are completely sexually immoral, and you talk to people about those things and they say, well, I'm not hurting anyone. Who's it hurting? Are the kind of answers you get. That is arrogance causing blindness. I don't have to go any further than to say it's hurting God. That should be enough. But it's not just hurting God. It's hurting people too. It's doing damage to people's souls. But see, the arrogance blinds us to all of that, and all we see is the temporal. And that is part of what's going on here and part of what we can learn from this. We must not mistake God's patience for his indifference. So someone commits adultery, someone commits fornication, someone commits some other gross act of immorality, and they live and nothing happens, and they say, well, that was no big deal. I didn't get sick. I didn't die. Nobody was hurt. And it becomes easier to do what? Do it again. And again. And again. Don't mistake God's patience with indifference. What does 2 Peter 3:9 say about that? Anybody remember? The Lord is not slow to fulfill his promise, as some count slowness, but is patient toward you, not wishing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. Why? Why aren't we struck dead the moment we sin? That is the wage of sin, right? Because God is being patient. Why is God being patient? There's a reason he's being patient. He wants us to be saved. He doesn't want us to die and be lost. If we were immediately struck dead every time that we sin, well, it could only happen once. If we were immediately struck dead and eternally separated from God the moment we sinned the first time, how many people would be saved? None. But that is not what God desires. So God extends long-suffering patience, giving us the opportunity to do what? To repent and go home to him. Don't mistake God's patience with indifference. These folks likely went home that night thinking that God had no power over them. They should not mistake God's patience for indifference. By the way, what did eventually happen to the nation of Babylon? Yeah, ain't much left of it, is there? In fact, there's a bunch of countries over there where it used to be, and most of them don't like each other, and they fight, squabble amongst themselves most of the time. Verse 5. He goes home. He's been drinking. He's been partying. He's thumbed his nose at Jehovah. Immediately, the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. I say go home. He was already home, but you get my point. This brings the party to an end. Opposite the lampstand. That is not just good writing. The details like that in fiction writing, that's considered good writing. You fill in details and it makes it more interesting and kind of gives a picture of the land. There's a reason we're told that it was opposite the lampstand. Why is that? Yeah, it was illuminated. It could be seen. What happened was visible. The king saw the hand as it wrote. The king's color changed. And his thoughts alarmed him. I'm going to stop there for a moment. It doesn't tell us how his color changed. I'm thinking he didn't blush. I'm thinking he went white. Pale, like he had just seen a ghost. The king's color changed. His thoughts alarmed him. His limbs gave way. His knees buckled. He had no strength in his arms. His knees knocked together. As I read this, I can't help but think of a Scooby-Doo cartoon. Anybody else grow up watching Scooby-Doo? I mean, this is like Shaggy when he sees the ghost. The king called loudly to bring in the enchanters, the Chaldeans, and the astrologers. Same people his dad had called on. Now, we're sometime later, probably not the same individuals, but practitioners of the same arts. The king declared to the wise men of Babylon, whoever reads this writing and shows me its interpretation shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around his neck and shall be third ruler in the kingdom. Purple, significance of that is that was the very expensive clothing. So he wasn't just saying, I'm going to give you nice clothes. He's saying what? That is true, but there's even one other layer of significance. Who wore purple? Royalty, the people in control. And so I'm going to raise you up to the ruling class. I'm going to give you a chain of gold around your neck. Apparently they were from the hood. Big gold chains were important. And actually that just tells us that those big gold chains have always been impressive to men. And if you wanted to show someone that you were successful, you do what? You wear a lot of jewelry. Shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. It's interesting that he said third ruler. There's a reason for that, I believe. All right, a very important reason for that. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Just remember two things. Remember that I told you that Belshazzar and King Belshazzar itself is a controversy from this chapter. And we'll talk about why it was controversial. And remember that it says third ruler here, because when we talk about why it's controversial, when we get to the explanation, this third ruler thing will make a whole lot more sense. All right, I'll make you third ruler in the kingdom. All the king's wise men came in. Now listen, everybody wants this. Here's my shot. So yeah, give me a chance. But they could not read the writing or make known the king the interpretation. Then King Belshazzar was greatly alarmed, and his color changed, and his lords were perplexed. Love that word, perplexed. What's it mean? I'm sorry? Confused. Ooh, I love stymied too. That's another good word. They were dumbfounded. Had no idea what to think. Have no idea what it says. They see their shot at the big time, and it is evaporating in front of them because they can't read it. I'm going to tell you, they're apparently more honorable than me because I'd try. I'd offer something. Anyway, they have this human-like hand that appears. Okay. Well, who's doing the writing? Let's kind of cheat and look ahead a little bit. Who's doing the writing? God. Okay, so this isn't literally the hand of God. It's like a disembodied hand, a hand like that of a man that's doing this. But it's also doing something pretty significant, because I'm assuming the plaster on the wall wasn't still wet. And so it'd take quite a bit to scratch a message in a hardened wall. So there's something significant going on here that can't be missed. The king's face changes. He's terrified. He calls for the wise men. They can't interpret it. This is the third time now. The third time that Babylon's wise men are shown to be what? Yeah, limited. Unable to exhibit authority and power over God's revelation. So you've got information from God. They can't even grasp it. This is very much akin to what Paul speaks about, I think, in the first letter to the church at Corinth, maybe the second, but I think it's first. But Paul writes about, by inspiration, about the natural-minded man not being able to understand the things of God. This is just a literal demonstration of that. They can't tell you what it says, much less tell you what it means. And so they're powerless before God's revelation. And of course, we've got the mirror of chapter 2, when the pagan king is troubled by the message from God, and of chapter, was it 3? The second one? The tree image, the same kind of idea, just beside himself in terms of these things. We have that happening yet again. So now we have got, once again, the same process going on, same story, different leader. There's a couple things we need to, I think, generally understand about this, because we see echoes of this way back in Genesis, for instance, where the king of Egypt, Pharaoh, comes to respect God and gives Joseph great standing and power in his kingdom. And lets Joseph bring his entire family over. 70 people come over. They settle in the best land of Egypt. They prosper and grow. Then the text tells us that another Pharaoh arose who did not know Joseph. Now, sometimes we probably don't stress this enough. When it says another Pharaoh arose who did not know Joseph, it's also implying another Pharaoh arose who did not know Joseph's God. Because that was a big part of why Joseph had risen to such prominence with this Pharaoh, is the Pharaoh realized that the God that he served was beneficial to them and powerful. And not knowing the stories and not knowing what happened and not having that information, the next generation forgot about the previous generation and what they had learned and went right back to the same foolish positions that the previous generation had been in before they were taught the lesson. We have an idiom saying in our language expressing this principle: those who do not know history are doomed to repeat it. But more important to that, it teaches me that I don't care how much I know and how much it augments the way that I think and behave. My children are not guaranteed to learn from that. If I don't want my children to grow up ignorant of God, ignorant of the will of God, ignorant of the power of God, ignorant of the work of God, it's not enough just that I understand it and I live my life taking it into account, but I also have to do something else. I have to teach these things. If you do not teach these things, it will be forgotten. And that's what's happened here. They have forgotten the things that they had learned under the previous king. And they find themselves right back where they were before. And is anything going to be different this time around? No, because here it is. It starts the same way. God makes his presence known and expresses his will. We'll have to wait till next week to find out what that will is. Anybody have any questions or comments before we stop? All right, I appreciate your participation, your attention this morning.
I have heard of a land shall